Kanchenjunga mountain. So, yeah, unluckily, still covered in that cloud. It's moved a little bit to that side. You can see a little bit more of the mountain now there in the back, but still you can't see fully the top. If that thing moves a little bit, then you'll be able to see the top. So maybe during while I'm teaching, you might be able to catch a glimpse ultimately of uh, the mountain itself. I hope I'm not obstructing the view too much. Exodus chapter 21, verse 1. Now these are the rules that you shall set before them. Right? So the previous chapter, the Ten Commandments, chapter 20, the Ten Commandments, that is a Decalogue. It's a 10 words. That's a basis. That's like the constitution. Right now we are coming into a more detailed explanation on some of them ultimately, or on other aspects of the culture is going to be important, things that they need to be reminded of. So it's called the rules. The Decalogue, 10 words, now we have rules. That is an outline, right, in which you live. And this is now in that outline specific explanations of how you live in that outline. Maybe kind of a simpler view. Right. So Moses up on the mountaintop, cloud covering it. The cloud is still covering most of that mountain over there. Verse 2. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, and in the seventh he shall go out free for nothing. So it starts off with, lo and behold, slavery. Why? Because this is so relevant to them. They are just leaving the country of Egypt, where they were enslaved for, well, maybe, slaves, that is, for about 70 years, maybe a little bit more, right? And, well, actually, it would have been more than 70 years. Why? Because by the time Moses was born, they were already enslaved, and this is now 80 years later, so it would be around maybe just over 100 years, not a lot more, most likely. Well, actually, yeah, somewhere between 80 and 100, because since when Aaron was born, he was not killed. But Moses they wanted to kill. So somewhere in that time they had to make this law concerning the slavery. So yes, they were not living 400 years as slaves understandably, but still they were slaves for so long. And unluckily, what very often happens is if you were abused, then you become an abuser. So many people who are alcoholics because their fathers were, or people over them were their were alcoholics. So that is, or men abusing their wives because their fathers abused their mothers, kind of idea. I'm not saying, or rapists become raping others. I'm not saying it always needs to happen, but a lot of time it does happen like that. So what's been done to you, you do to others. Right? I mentioned in the introduction part about how the abhorrent idea of apartheid, where we thought we can group people together. Yes, we had our justifications for it. We even justified it with the Bible. And yes, there's nothing wrong with having different peoples. In the Bible, it says in New Heaven and New Earth, there's going to be people of all tongues, tribes, and nations. So yes, there's still going to be tribes and nations and all of that. So there's nothing wrong with people wanting to be with their on this planet, at least in that sense. But it becomes a problem when people put that above God, ultimately above their relationship, for example, with other brothers and sisters in Christ, right? But just because they are a different sex or they're a different color or anything like that, that's nonsense. That's not supposed to be. Okay. Right. I've been to lots of churches where people speak a language I can't understand. I don't mind. I just still go there because they're Christian. That's it. So, but what I'm just trying to get at is afterwards, ultimately, when then we turned and we became a multicultural society. Well, these days, if you are black, then you have the right to get certain jobs. Well, if you're colored or Indian or from Indian background or other background, you don't have any rights like that, whites ultimately, right? And so there's a reverse apartheid going on. No, yes, sure, they will deny it, and right, ultimately, but that is kind of, yeah, what life is now. So it is a danger, a clear and present danger, like they say, where these things kind of just can happen like that. Okay, so that is why they ultimately start with this God starting with this, because they can turn around and then enslave to others what was done to them, even to their own people. And that is why it starts off with buying a Hebrew slave. And it's supposed to only serve for 6 years. Because the seventh year, they need to be set free for nothing, right? Now, later on, it's going to be explained. This is actually, it was at that stage, not such a big problem because they're in the desert and they're on the way to the promised land. So they're not yet really at this kind of a stage where they have businesses, land, where they plant and they buy and they own property and all of those kinds of things. They're wandering in the desert. Okay, so but this is future laws for future, showing them that they are going to enter the promised land one at a time. So that while they are suffering in the desert, there is this, these laws set out there so that when you enter, that means you will enter it, and then you need to apply these laws. So as well, that is great news for them, knowing that although at this moment they don't need it, but in the future they're going to need it because they will enter the promised land and they will live there. So what will happen might happen then? Well, people might be reaching, some might be reaching others. Some might plant the harvest and then it's destroyed and then they lose everything and they can't pay the money back to the bank. I know how, well, one year my father lost our whole potato crop because of, well, what was it again? Can't forget the poison that they used to stuff to spray over the potatoes, kind of. It was later on banished in the world. That stage, not yet. And yeah, father took the guys to court, but ultimately lost because it was against Monsanto, and you don't win against those guys. And yeah, that really put us and our family on the back feet, and never really ever really recovered of that. No, so imagine in this scenario as well. You lost your farmer. This hail destroys your crop, not the neighbors. You lost everything, and now how are you going to survive? How are you provide for your family? Well, you go and work for someone. You sell yourself in as a servant to someone. That person gives you housing. That person gives you a salary. Even he takes care of you. He feeds you. Right. That is better than dying of hunger out there somewhere. Hey, no, again, no, but those people are so stupid, like the slaves. They call it your slaves, but it's more like servants, right? And we still have lots of people like that today. It's remember as well when we grew up, there were people who were poor, so the empty farmhouses or other kinds of houses, we would provide for them so they can stay there. They need not work on the farm or anything like that, but they can stay there for free. In most cases, even the churches gave food for them to eat. So it is taking care of others more than anything else. So it's a good thing, right? So God is getting at here is just the fact that they must not turn around and do to others with it. So that He is laying down the foundations for how do they need to treat people who can't afford to take care of themselves. Plain and simple. 6 years working, so you lose everything. You go and work for someone for 6 years. You have house, you have food, you have some money that you can put away. And after 6 years, you go out and you can use that money you save to maybe buy some land, maybe buy some seed, go and plant your ancestral lands again, right? Because you don't lose your land per se, but you can't afford to plant anything. So you can go back and buy some seeds and go and plant the land and have a harvest and can get out of the debt trap. Okay, so yes, this is ultimately therefore a grace and a great thing, actually, instead of a negative thing.